Right, so yeah, innovation in education. What do? I come along with a PowerPoint. How innovative is that? That's never been done before, has it? Okay. What do students do when you give them a word like innovate? Well, they look it up in the dictionary and they stick down a dictionary definition, don't they? So this is what innovate means according to one of the dictionaries. Make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods, new ideas or products. Okay, it's a definition. I'd like to say it's a fairly rubbish one. I don't think that's most of what we do. I don't think it's most of what I do. I don't think I innovate by bringing new ideas. What I try and do is actually enable students to see old ideas. We're supposed to reference stuff that's less than 10 years old. Ecclesiastes, slightly older than 10 years, by about 2,600 years. You know, do you agree with that? There is nothing new under the sun. You know that we do, it's kind of been done before. Is that a problem? No, because actually, I don't know how well you can see this image, right? You don't have to teach little children to be curious. You don't have to teach, you know, she's seen dogs before, hasn't she? She knows what a dog is, but look at her. This is new. Actually, when we teach well, what we do is we engage that sense of the child in all of us. One of the things that got commented on my award was the fact that I do magic tricks in some of my lectures. Very few of my lectures, to be fair, but I do. I do magic tricks. Why? Because actually magic taps into that sense that there was a time when all of us believed that the world was magic. When all of us, when a rainbow was a magic thing, when snow was magic, when, you know, clouds were, everything was new and different. And somehow we lose that on the way. We go through an education system that almost beats that out of us. For almost from day one, we get that. No disrespect to the early years tutors, they're clearly doing what they can. They were great, sorry, they were great. You know, but this is kind of, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to encourage students to have this same, look at the things they've seen before, but look at them with new eyes. Go back and look at them with the eyes of a child, look at them with the eyes of the outsider, of the someone who's new and someone who's different. That's what I try and bring. Sometimes shocking ways, sometimes disturbing ways, sometimes funny ways. Another image here that's going to become the sort of substance of what I want to talk about here, and it's the idea of the stepped pyramid. Image of a step pyramid. And what you notice here is it really doesn't matter how good this layer here is. If this layer is fragile and weak, it's going to collapse. And it doesn't matter how good that layer is if this layer is weak, and that one and that one. And this is what we need to be building on. This is what the whole structure works on. Now you think about the training you've had as educators. On the whole, most of what we get taught is techniques. Things, isn't it? It's things. We get taught, you know, learning tools. Here's a learning tool. Here's a learning tool. Here's a learning tool. Actually, if you haven't got the theory or model that underpins that tool, if you don't understand, again, it's a shame they didn't stay because, you know, listen to the early years people, they're talking about the pedagogical principles that underpin their practice. We need to have that. One of the other things I've been to is storytelling, and I promise you, this is not an apocryphal story. This genuinely happened to me. When my eldest son was about 3, we had a trainee nursery nurse come to visit us, doing an observation as part of her course. And it's very keen, very interested. So, oh, we've been doing children's learning, children's drawings at college. We're doing children's drawings. Oh, and they told us that when a child shows you a drawing, you don't tell them, you don't say, what is it? You say,
very good.
No. Or you know, no, tell me about it. You know, you can tell the early years, you can tell the health visitors, nursing, whatever, no. Oh, okay, just know your stuff. Tell me about it. Yeah, tell me about it. That's what you're supposed to say. Right, about 10 minutes later, my eldest son, who is about 3, comes over with this drawing that he's done. You know, very excited, shows her the drawing, and she goes, oh yes, tell me about it. And he goes, blah, blah, blah. It's not very good, is it? That is not. I told that story for about 10 years. After being telling it for about 10 years, I went back to my wife and I said, you know that time when came around our house and said that to Matthew, did that really happen? And she went, yep, it really happened. Right? But actually we do that. You can see there is no idea, so there's no technique so brilliant that you can't ruin it by not understanding the principles that underpin it. Right? We're moving to Waterside. Right? I have an open door policy. right? How's my open door policy going to work when I haven't even got a chair to call my own? You know, what's the principle? We can't have an open door policy at Waterside because we've got no doors to open. Fine. It'll work, I'm sure, but there we go. Right. But what it comes down to in my eyes is relationships. This is the crux. By the way, there's 5 layers. We're only into level 3, so sit down here for a while. Think about what kind of... Right, those of us... I thought it was really interesting. You said this was a punishment. I'm going to let you into a secret that I feel like winning a student-led teaching award is a bit like having the marker cane. We're on the wrong side. The students like us. And somehow that's seen as a sign of being suspect, of being dubious. I do actually feel that. Genuinely, I feel that way. That's not a joke. I genuinely feel like being liked by my students is not always perceived as being a good thing. Right? I do not see myself as superior to my students. I'm all those who know me well will be very aware of my limitations and my weaknesses. So am I. I have the benefit of being a bad student. When I was a student, I was a dreadful student. I still am. I'm still quite a poor student. I'm a bit too distracted. I'm a bit too... I talk without thinking, as is clearly demonstrated by this talk. But you know, when a student comes to see me, I want that student to have the whole of my attention. You know, I've had colleagues kind of laugh at the idea that you can love your students, see that as suspect. But actually, I do love my students. They're unique individuals fighting their own battle. I'm amazed by what some of my students go through and still turn up to lectures and still manage to hand in a bit of work which somehow manages to get a D. It deserves a D and a gold star medal for courage some of the time. And if you lose that, you've lost something valuable. That in turn, based, you know, on your qualities and attributes. You know, you've got to be caring. I think to be a good teacher, you've got to be caring. Interesting if you don't necessarily, it doesn't matter too much what you care about. I think you can be a good teacher. I've seen good teachers who don't particularly care about students, but care about their subject. And they care about their subject so much that that enthusiasm rubs off. We don't all have to be the same. We can be different, very different. But I think you've got to love your subject. You've got to love what you're doing. Why? I can't believe I get paid to do this some days. It's a privilege to be a teacher. It's a privilege to be an educator. I think it's a wonderful job. And that has to come across in the qualities. And that in turn has to come across in our values and beliefs. You know, I had a really weird experience that on Tuesday I went out to a drama group. And you know those weird bits where I was chatting to someone there and I found out they were the sister of someone who had a profound effect on me. Because she said, when she was a student in a team I was working in, said her dad always used to tell her and her sisters, "You're no better than anybody else, but there's nobody better than you." What a great value to have underpinning your work. I teach that. It was really weird. That was like 10, 15 years ago she told me that, and I bump into her sister 10 or 15 years later who tells me the same thing. I said, "You haven't got a sister who trained to be a nurse about 15 years?" "Yeah, that's my sister." How strange. You know, do we have these values of mutual respect? Do we believe? You know, one of the things I hate with a passion is students being described as A-grade students, or B-grade students, or C-grade students, or D-grade students. There is no such thing as a grade student. There are only A-grade pieces of work, B-grade pieces of work. So we don't grade students, we grade their work. You know, well, why do we use that language? And to me, this is bringing us on to language. Now, the previous speaker quoted these kind of very, you know, educated people talking about professionalism. Anyone know where this comes from? This is Albus Dumbledore to Harry Potter. This is Albus Dumbledore to Harry Potter. But actually, isn't it a profound truth? Isn't it a profound truth? The language we use to describe what we do. I attack that idea of the A-grade student or the D-grade student as being a toxic, harmful language. Let's talk about raising the bar. You can't do much about it now. People can sack me. That's all you can do. You got me up the front. You got to listen to me, right? Can walk out, I suppose. The vast majority of students I speak to are paralysed by fear. They're frightened of getting it wrong. They're frightened of being judged. They're frightened of failing. They're frightened of saying or doing the wrong thing. So they learn how to keep quiet. They learn how to play the game, hopefully. And then occasionally you meet the ones who learn how to find their own voice. And it makes the whole job worthwhile. And we've got to be careful with this because this stuff really matters. So I hope that I did, just thinking about, what are my techniques? What's my theory? What kind of relationships do I want to develop? What are my attributes? Every one of us is different. Everyone should bring the lovely idea of teams is you bring something different. And then finally, big questions. What's education for? What's the university for? Are we a business seeking to satisfy our customers? Or let's go back to that change maker idea that was introduced in the first of the talks. Are we a community dedicated to changing society? We need to think about that because that will underpin everything we do. And again, my last opportunity before you start throwing things at me, I'd also like to very briefly talk about what I consider to be the nonsense of NSS, modular evaluation, and the traffic light system we have, right? These are nonsense. Why? Because actually, there's very, very good research to show that what students like isn't always what's good for them, and what's good for students isn't always, it's the other way around, you know what I mean? So often giving students what they want doesn't actually help them, and trying to give them that interferes with the learning. Traffic light system. We have the system whereby, if you get so many A's and B's, then you'll get a green traffic light, and if it's less than that number, we've got modules here. The course I teach on, a lot of my students come from non-conventional backgrounds. Right. Probably if we worked it out, I guess the average UCAS points for my students might be 240. Yet we have a university-wide policy that says my modules have to achieve the same grade profile as modules with students with 400 UCAS points. I'm going to suggest to you there's only one way I can do that, and that's by cheating. And also, what does it do? Going back to principles idea, it robs students. We are so frightened to give students honest and accurate feedback that we end up playing games. I think there's so much game playing going on. And actually we know it, and nobody talks about it. That's why I'm stood up here, because I know you can't do much about it till I sit down, and then I'll be in trouble. But actually we know this. We know this stuff goes on. We know that actually what we're trying to do is we're chasing this model of a business model instead of a transformative educational model. We were talking about feedback, weren't we, at lunchtime? And actually what we said is, students don't mind critical feedback as long as they know it comes from that compassionate, caring heart that wants them to do well. And actually what we do is by elevating grades, by things like the traffic light system, by the NSS, by elevating those external kind of indicators of performance rather than the internal transformation of students, we deny students the opportunity to learn. And I think we can do better. Having said that, I was the one who said it was recharging the batteries, and what has been great today is I felt like I've got an awful lot of allies in the room. I think there's an awful lot of people who feel the same way as me, and that's been lovely. So that's been a real positive affirmation today that I know it's not just me that's thinking this way. And as a university, if we truly want to be excellent, we've got to be willing to take some risks, but they're risks based on those profound, deep values and beliefs in every student we teach. So thank you very much for listening, and I will shut up and run away.